Welcome, new and old friends. My name is 242, and this is my home. 2 and 42 got the week off since we have a special occasion to celebrate. We have reached 750 subscribers on YouTube. First, I will tell you a tale about my life, kind of a fairy tale. Then I will lead you down my halls and introduce you to other storytellers I have met on my walks. So take a seat next to the fire. I have your beverage of choice right there for you on the side table. Oh, and things are about to get spooky. The Gift with a Price. Written by Serafin the Midnight Bard and narrated by 242. Once upon a time, in a realm beyond, in a time forgotten, there existed a world like one from a dream. Life within this realm was aglow with energy of creation, and those people born to this realm were beyond that which we see today. On a whim, with a word or a flick of their hand, the force of their very life would manifest as magic at their beck and call. The earth would shift, the winds change, and the waters roil with the simple push of a person's will. It was a land where wishes needn't be spoken, as one needed only imagine them to make them reality. It was on this land, long, or perhaps not so long ago, that a rare species of magic was born. This magic, rarest of all in existence, allowed a person to become unshackled from their world of birth, allowing them to transverse beyond the fabric of their reality, and to enter other universes with a thought. It was this very thought that was on the minds of a young couple, as they twice had seen windows to other worlds open before their daughter. It was nothing, they whispered to themselves upon seeing this phenomenon. We saw nothing but shadows at the edge of our vision. A mirage, said they upon their second sighting of the gate. Nothing more than a hallucination brought on by much work and little rest. There was no denying what they saw the third time it occurred. The eyes of their child would illuminate in an array of colors, and a window matching them would appear before her, opaque at first, but little tidbits of the world beyond would begin to bleed through little by little. The blaring sounds of something akin to the wild birds of the misty valleys to the north. A scent like sulfur, accompanied by gray clouds of smog. Voices. So many voices. Nights were long for the young couple as they stressed not knowing what to do about their child's blossoming gift. It was a common occurrence that those gifted with the ability to move between worlds would become wanderers and Nights were long for the young couple as they stressed not knowing what to do about their child's blossoming gift. It was a common occurrence that those gifted with the ability to move between worlds would become wanderers across realities. A day would come that they would move beyond their home, but there was rarely ever a day when they would return. Those who spoke of the gift often said, "The call of the worlds beyond must be heeded, and it is not one that people can refuse." Who knows what fate fell upon those who moved beyond the bounds of their reality? None other than those who walk the universes themselves could speak to what lays beyond the skies, upon foreign continents likely galaxies away, or beneath the light of strange suns. No, the parents did what any loving guardians would in fear that they could not protect their prodigy. They enlisted the help of the sages of their land, who placed upon the child a spell that would lock away her gift and leave her unaware of it. And so it was. The seasons would pass and years come and go. The child, now a young woman, would often find herself staring into nothing. There was something curious about the empty spaces between things. It was as if something was missing, as if she was expecting to see something there when she turned to face the empty spaces before her. It was strange, but still, she always looked whenever she felt the call of the void, hoping that maybe this would be the day that she would see something. "Daughter," said her mother one day as she found herself waiting for the unseen something once more, "do not let yourself be distracted. The spells at work here are heavy. If you do not keep mind of your thoughts, they can easily tear them from your mind." The woman snapped back into the reality before her. A family had brought a body to the lab earlier. There was much talk about this man, as it was said that none had seen him in decades. Whispers abounded that he was one of the gifted, and that he appeared a short time ago. His brother saw him step through one of those windows to the other world that they can open, and recognized him instantly despite time's touch upon his face. The old man had used up the last of his strength returning home, wishing to see his brother one last time before he passed. He apparently strained himself too much, as he was barely able to say his goodbye before collapsing dead. But that's what the necromancers were for. The woman's mother had taught her well, and together with the help of the man's brother, they lifted him onto the stone slab, placing him squarely at the center of an incantation circle of runes and sacred geometry. Having recently succeeded her mother as the village's sage of necromancy, the woman would be in charge of calling upon the dead men's memories, and placing them within a crystal orb that the family would use to see all that their deceased relative wished he could have told them, the sights he had seen, the memories he had made. It was an easy enough task when looking for one specific memory in a sea of day-to-day normalcy, but she somehow suspected the task would be monumental for one of the gift. Who knew how big a memory of the worlds beyond would be? Who knew how heavy? How much strength and concentration it would take? Well, no time like the present to find out. The task was monumental. The woman would spend days channeling magic into the circle, which would then take the memories from the man and pull them out as if she was fishing for a trout. The memories would struggle at first, as if struggling against the weight of gravity, requiring effort to pull free. But when she succeeded in seizing it, the memory would fly outwards in an array of light and sound, hovering in the air as if it was a cloud of thoughts. The woman was curious as to what she would see, but if there was one thing she never expected, it was that the sights and sounds of the worlds beyond would feel so familiar. Looking upon the visions as they flew free from the man's head, she felt as if for the first time since she could remember, she was seeing what she had always expected to see upon turning to the call of the void. The worlds beyond felt as if they were things that she always knew existed, but could never understand why. It was a vision of places she'd never been, but always felt, never heard, but always knew. She seized one memory after another for weeks, until one day, the well of visions went dry. There were no more that the man could show her, All of it had been placed into the crystal orb for the man's family to look upon, to treasure as their brother's gift to them. And she had seen it all. She had been full of the life these worlds gifted her, full of the stories that the people in these faraway places told. And now she stood empty, once again turning, hoping to see beyond, but finding nothing. But perhaps the man's memories are more of a gift than she originally thought. They say that the call of the worlds beyond must be heeded, and it is not one that people can refuse. One way or another, fate finds a way of putting people on their path. And for the woman, fate had put her on her path the day she began to pull memories from the man's mind. The circle upon which she stood was forged to set free that which was locked away. In the case of the man, it set free his memories from his mind after he had passed. But during the day she worked to pull the stories from his mind, she was unaware that she was loosening the bonds that the village sages had placed upon her gift so long ago. She returned to the laboratory where she had done her work, hoping to find something left of the vision she had seen, something to assuage the emptiness that she was feeling anew. The laboratory was a quiet place normally, but in the wake of all she experienced, it was deafening. Each echo of her step upon the marble floor was a resonant like thunder. She stepped into the circle aimlessly, and, like a drop of water that tips the glass, the leftover energy of the circle shattered the last remaining barrier that held her gift at bay. She heard the call, and turned to find that a window of shimmering color stood before her, opaque at first, but little tidbits of the world beyond would begin to bleed through little by little. With her heart racing and her hands holding tight her mother's book, she took a step beyond and left her world behind. It is said that she has learned much, and that she has somehow lived beyond natural life. Her magic, originally bound and limited, has expanded. Whispers say that she opened a door to an empty realm, and called upon the magic of the worlds she lived. She feels the emptiness of the void with every story she heard and read. Serafin really did a great job putting together that story for me. I used to use windows to pass through the realms, but now I use doors. I find them much easier to move through. Let me show you. Yes, here is our first door, and the first storyteller we will see this evening. His name is Willow the Schizo, and he really likes to do whatever he wants in his realm. Some days you'll get games, next you'll get true crime, and sometimes stories. So, let's see what story he has for us today. I would like to give a warning before this story starts. There is talk of self-harm. If this is too much, please use the timestamp down below to skip to the next narrator. Thank you so much.
I Will Never Go Back to the Hospital in Halstead, Kansas. Written by Willow the Schizo. Midway through the year 2017, a friend and I decided to pack up a couple of things and head out to the nearby abandoned hospital that sat in the middle of town. The children's ward was definitely weird, but most of the hospital was gutted. I grabbed my camera, my laptop, and anything else I would need to capture any of the evidence that might happen that night. I grabbed everything and headed out to my friend's house to go pick him up. Once we were both ready, we headed out to the park to keep an eye out on the hospital, just for any police presence or anybody who might be watching. After a couple of hours, we noticed a couple of people walking towards the hospital. We decided to lay low, but then we noticed it was a couple of kids from the town who also seemed to be interested in the hospital. We met up with them and decided to set up a 3-man insertion team and a 2-man team to keep an eye out for anyone who might go around the area. We opened the window inside the horseshoe of the hospital, having only darkness as our protection. I stepped in with 2 of the people who showed up, while Cody and the other one of the 3 stayed outside. Once inside, I locked the window to make sure that no one from the outside would be able to come in and fuck with us. We turned on our flashlights and I hit record on my camera. Walking out of the room the window was in, we traveled through the maze of construction equipment and doorways leading to other rooms, finally finding the staircase. We walked up to the 2nd floor and set all of my shit on the stretcher that sat in the middle of the reception area. Taking a look around, I remember the darkness, the silence that then slowly fell over the room. I've had this feeling before, and I don't really know how to explain it. I guess it could be described as my instincts, but I knew something was about to happen. Whether it was due to the darkness engulfing the entire hospital, or the numbing silence. Possibly both, honestly. When my phone began to ring, I knew something was wrong. Picking up the phone, I saw that it was my friend outside calling. So I answered and set the call to speaker. "Yeah man, what's up?" I spoke, taking a good look around me with the light on now. I could see the window leading to the roof. I could see the open doorway with a tiny window on the right. And the hallway that led to the area of the child's doll I left for the little girl's spirit. That was then followed by the chapel area. "Dude, you guys have to get out of there right now. It isn't safe," I heard my friend almost scream. I sighed, knowing that when he was scared, all he wanted to do was run, no matter if we had just gotten there. Taking another look around, I didn't really take him seriously. I figured he just wanted to leave like normal. "Bro, we just set up. Why do we need to leave?" "We just saw 3 giant shadow people about 8 feet each. One ran straight into the window you guys went in through. Another jumped straight onto the roof, and the third jumped into the 2nd floor window, sat there for a bit, and then just phased into the window." Now, of course, I didn't believe him. Why would I? I mean, 8-foot shadow people jumping into the hospital? How could anyone believe that shit? I went to tell him how I thought he was bullshitting. Before I could get anything else out, I heard the biggest bang I have ever heard come from right behind me. I turned around to see if the other 2 were fucking with me, but they were on either side of me as I turned. And looking at both of them, we nodded in agreement. "Yeah, fuck that, we're on our way." I instantly hung up and started to pack up everything I had just unpacked. I threw my bag on my shoulder and we began to run down the hallway back to the staircase. While descending the stairs, I felt a dark presence crawl on top of me, and I soon began to fall, deeper and deeper. I could feel myself start to be swallowed by the darkness of my own mind. I saw my childhood first, the cries of a baby, the sound of flesh on wood, then against the wall, and soon the crushing of bones, being shattered into pieces. The pain was immense. First my skull, a migraine that felt as if an ice pick were working its way throughout my head. My skin splitting, revealing the fresh, dark red blood. Next, 3 of my ribs, the sharp edge of the coffee table being slammed into my gut until 3 ribs on the right side of my body were completely destroyed. Pieces now in my lungs and in my stomach. After that came another rib, and then another and another. Breathing was difficult at this time. No matter how hard I tried, it felt as if with each breath, my lungs were punctured by another piece of my ribs. Then came my collarbone, ripped apart from the inside. I could hardly move. That pain was so intense. And I thought I would die right then and there. Finally, I could stand. I could see myself as an infant in the hospital, recovering, bandages and casts covering my body. I can't believe someone would do this to a 4-month-old child. I heard the voice come from behind me. Turning around, I saw the two people who picked up the broken remains of the infant and put them back together. Now, reaching inside their own chests, they both pulled out half of their own hearts, put them together, now in its own full heart, slipping it inside the chest of the baby. I knew this child was me, and the two people soon became clear. I knew they were the two who adopted me, my new parents, the ones who saved me. I felt happy. I wanted to hug them more than anything, to thank them for taking my pain away. Before I could move, though, I felt an overwhelming pain in my new heart. I looked over to see my sister, Stephanie, beautiful as a teenager, very little cares in the world. I saw her slipping slowly away as the brain tumor grew in size, almost the shape of a baseball now. Finally, the image of my sister faded, and the darkness crept over me once more. I tried to look back over at my parents, but could see there was my mother, broken down on the ground, frustrated and overwhelmed. I saw my father laying in bed, his memory fading, his body deteriorating. My father, who once saved me, now a frail, fragile shell of who he once was. I tried to scream. I tried with everything I had to tell him I loved him, but my words were drowned out by 2 gunshots. I looked to my right to find my younger brother laying on the ground in a pool of his own blood, the gun he had stolen from my mom and had used to end it all, still in his left hand. I saw my father, now nothing more than skin and bones, be put into the casket. It was so hard to say goodbye. So as he was put down into the ground, I felt my body jump down with him. The feeling of falling once again came over me. This time a light came from in front of me. As I fell closer and closer to the light, I felt the urge to puke, now being consumed by the light. I woke up on the ground, covered in sweat. I looked around and saw that I was outside, with everyone looking down at me. I looked back at the hospital, the window wide open. Just the memory of what happened was too much. So I got up. I shut the window, locking it from the outside. I wiped off my forehead, my arm now covered in sweat. I turned back to them and nodded, with the images of what happened in the hospital still on my mind. I knew that I will never go back to the hospital in Halstead, Kansas.
That story truly gave me a chill. I don't think I'll be heading to that hospital. A place that shows you your past, but mostly only the dark parts. Horrible and too easy to get lost in. Thank you, Willow, for that story. Now let's move on. Yes, here we are. This is Idiotic Synergy. He is a storyteller, but he also talks about Warhammer. As you can tell by his name, he calls himself an idiot. With all that being said, let's see what story he has for us today.
Superhumans by username HauntingBuyer8532. It was around 2025 when the first superhuman was born. Its skin was made of an organic metal. It wasn't dissimilar to stainless steel. Objects also seemed to be attracted to it. Naturally, the government swoop in. They originally thought it was some disease. They quickly realised it was some sort of odd birth defect. The parents were examined and showed no anomalies in their genes. They are still under observation in a lab somewhere. The world is scared of things that were different than them. This applied to the first superhuman too. He was vivisected and his skin was peeled off for study. After all, humanity was afraid of things that could not be understood. A year after the first superhuman was born, another one was born. This time it could grow shadowy creatures out of its body. This one was also taken, experimented on, and the parents detained. Soon, more of them were born. Eventually, there was one born almost every week. Of course, not all were captured. Some managed to either escape or evade capture. One who escaped caused 21 casualties before being exterminated. One of the ones who evaded capture accidentally killed its family. These incidents, of course, caused people to reject the superhumans. Some superhumans were kidnapped and tortured by people. Eventually, most of the superhuman population were wiped out. Most of the kills were from the government controlling the population. Eventually, the superhuman population went extinct. This entry is dedicated to the superhuman race, a fearsome species of beasts that threatened the human race. May they never roam the earth again.
Superhumans being taken out by humans? Well, I don't like that idea. What would they do with a mage like me? Terrible idea, and not out of the realm of possibilities. I have read some of those fairy tales and also history, and this is why my home is in a void. No one can come here unless I call them. Thank you, Idiotic Synergy, for that story, and try not to get caught. Now, let's continue on our night. So, this is Hair-Raising Narratives. I like to call him Hair a lot. He used to have this cute ghost, but he's changed it very recently to this darker look. I like the look of it, and the orange really sticks out nicely. He writes a lot of his own stories that he tells, and brings me in sometimes to help him bring them to life. Let's see what he has for us this evening.
Rising Tensions. Written and narrated by Hair-Raising Narratives. I cupped my hands to my face, breathing heavily as I kept them there for several seconds. "Are you okay?" asked a voice coming from the doorway. I lifted my head to see my coworker Caden leaning on the door. Just looking at his tight-fitting suits raised my blood pressure. I wasn't envious of his attire, nor did I give a shit what he chose to wear. It's just that it added to the absurdity that already was Caden. And he wasn't even wearing socks again. He'd previously argued that it was a stylistic choice and I needed to get with the times. I didn't care if it was what was considered as being hip by GQ. I couldn't stand it. I grunted before lowering my head back into my hands. A grunt? He asked in that weaselly voice of his. "What is it, Caden?" I responded, not bothering to lift my head back up. "You must have had a pretty rough weekend," he said as I heard his footsteps getting closer. "Let me guess, you stayed up late and drank a little too much, am I right?" I lifted my head up, leaning back into my seat, exhaling heavily. I stared at Caden, not uttering a word. He stood still, smirking before taking a couple of steps forward and pulling out a chair across my desk, before taking a seat. He placed his hands on the desk, interlacing his fingers. "Hey, I don't blame you for having a little fun, John. You know, I like to party as much as the next guy." He started, leaning in towards me. "With that being said, you look like shit. Look, Belinda's already pissed you haven't completed the evaluation report for staff. I don't know, man. Things aren't looking good."
I consider you a friend. I'm just trying to look out for you. You've been noticeably screwing up quite a bit lately. I say noticeably because, well, people are talking.
He leaned back in his seat, half smiling. I steadied my breathing as I felt a knot in my chest. I sat up straight and adjusted my shoulders. Who's been saying that? I asked as I rubbed my chest. What are you talking about? You're saying that as if I've been screwing up major projects or something. Look, if anyone's spreading rumors, it's probably been... I stopped myself from finishing my sentence, clearing my throat. Look, Caden, I began, wiping sweat off my face with my hand. It's Monday morning, man. I have a few things to work on. You think we could talk about this in the afternoon?
Well, I don't have anything specific to talk about,
he responded. Then what the hell are you doing here? Caden squinted his eyes and puckered his lips, staring down at the floor.
I just wanted to say hi,
he responded. He turned to his left, looking out of the office window. I stared at my computer, concentrating on the growing number of emails popping into my inbox. I was intent on not saying anything, hoping I had made my annoyance clear enough that Caden would get the message and leave my office. I shifted my eyes in his direction before returning them to my computer screen. The bastard was making this entire minuscule situation more awkward than it had to be. I refused to apologize. He was the one walking in here trying to make me look like a jackass. I refused to give him the satisfaction of an undeserved apology. Today was not the day to try me. I turned to look at him once again. This little prick was not going to leave my office without a fight. That much was clear. Are we done? I asked.
Did I do something wrong?
He responded in a fake sweet little voice that made me want to strangle him. Do something wrong? Dude, Caden, you came up in here talking shit first thing in the morning, and now you're acting all innocent? Then you sit there trying to make me seem like the asshole? Probably so you can go back and tell everybody else how much of an asshole I am and how much of a dick I was to you. Caden shook his head in disbelief.
John, look, I don't know what you're going through, but all I'm trying to do is help you.
Caden stood up and took a bottle of water from the shelf in the corner of my office before sitting back down. As he took a sip of water, I couldn't help but focus on the way he drank it. He drank it like a fucking animal. His every gulp made my temples throb and my chest tighten even more. I wanted to stand up, knock the water out of his hands, and bash his... I turned back to my computer, closing my eyes and slowly inhaling and exhaling.
But by the way, I want you to know that if you ever need someone to confide in, you can talk to me, Caden whispered. Whether it be any kind of issue at all. I consider you a friend, John. I know not everybody handles stress the same way. There are a lot of vices out there, you know.
I turned to look at Caden, not taking care to hide my frustration.
I think sometimes we need to pay close attention to how our behavior and how our vices affect others, he continued. My grandfather was an addict. The family suffered for many years because of his...
Get out! I yelled, standing up from my seat. Get the fuck out of my office! Caden looked at me with wide eyes and an open mouth. Now! He slowly stood up, placing his water on the desk. He quickly turned around and began walking out of the office. I picked up the water bottle and was about to throw it at his back before stopping myself and crushing it in my hand. Water exploded all over the desk, dripping down into the carpet. I sat back down, catching my breath. As I stared at the water dripping off the edge of the desk, I tried to remind myself why I stayed here. It wasn't as if I could just waltz out of here. I needed this job. I needed the money. Caden was well-liked in the office. Belinda thought very highly of him. This wasn't good. Belinda would be back in another 30 minutes after her meeting ended. If this got back to her, I'd be done for. I cleaned the mess I made and threw some paper towels over the carpet. I walked over to the mirror on the wall, staring intensely at my own reflection. This is the right thing to do. This is the right thing to do. I adjusted my tie before heading to Caden's office, knocking on the door to get his attention. He looked up from a folder he was looking through before looking back down. Hey, Caden, do you have a few minutes? He didn't respond. I looked back out of the office to make sure no one was around to hear our discussion. I walked over to his desk and sat across from him. Hey, listen. About what happened back there, about what I said, I think I took things a little too far. I think you're right about me being a little stressed. It's nothing serious, obviously. I think we all just, we all go through a little too much sometimes. I think we both just let things get a little too far, you know? Caden looked up from the folder he was sifting through.
Oh?
He began.
What exactly was it that I took too far? Was it the yelling? Was it all the yelling I did after you yelled at me?
No, look, I did all the yelling, obviously, Caden. But I mean, you did say some things that weren't...
I tried to talk to my friend out of concern, and now you come into my office and try to make it seem like it was both of us that had a mental breakdown, when in reality...
I did not have a mental breakdown, Caden. I just... Caden continued talking, but I could no longer comprehend the words that were coming out of his mouth. I felt my face go red. I saw his lips moving and his fucking skinny tie, and I knew I had to get out of there. I stood up and walked out, barely able to walk, my vision starting to blur. Caden came around and tried to stop me from leaving. Caden, not now. I tried warning him. I just need to leave. I'll come back. I just need to leave right now. Please let go of me. I felt the knot in my chest grow tighter, and the pain in my chest like I had never felt before. I walked around him, quickening my pace towards the door. In the blink of an eye, he grabbed my hand and I turned back and punched him in the jaw, sending him crashing into a nearby bookshelf. I walked over, grabbed a hardcover from the bookshelf, and proceeded to beat him in the face with it. He looked like he was saying or screaming something, but by this time I could no longer hear anything. That is, except for a ringing in my ears. I saw blood begin to splatter everywhere. The more I beat him, the better I felt. The more I beat him, the more I realized how my actions were not only justified, but essential. I beat him until my hands grew tired and my arms grew exhausted. I sat down next to him, looking up to see my coworkers standing in the doorway. I must have lost consciousness for a moment. When I regained my composure, a group of police officers were walking me through the hallway of our office floor. I blinked as the blood splatter continued trickling down from my forehead and into my eyes. My coworkers stood at their doorways. They were cheering me on, some of them clapping even. I still couldn't hear quite what everyone was saying, but they were no doubt praising me for the courageous actions that I had just taken. I chuckled in exhaustion, thinking of how much better I felt. The knot in my chest was now gone, and I could finally breathe. You're welcome. You're welcome. You're very welcome. You are so welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. I said, in an effort to acknowledge all the praise I was receiving. I don't think I had ever gotten such a standing ovation before in my life, ever. I felt the urge to cry in pure joy, but I kept my emotions in check, not wanting to ruin the moment. As we reached the exit of the building on the first floor, Belinda was walking in, a look of pure pride in her face.
What in God's name happened?
I guess skinny ties aren't in anymore, I responded, as I was led out of the building to sounding applause.
It seems the pressure of life got to our poor protagonist. I can get why a man who just won't let you be when you just need a moment to yourself can make you snap like that. Poor thing. And that mess is such a pain to clean without magic. Heck, with magic it's a pain. Thank you, hair-raising narratives, for your story. Now, this way, please. Oh yes, it is Serafin the Midnight Bard's time. He was so kind to help me with my own story. You think I wouldn't have him tell his own? Of course not. This is a bard that likes to travel like I do. You will find him in a dark alley or next to a nice fire in the middle of the night. Now, if you want to find his twin brother, that would be during the day, and you need to go to a very terrible sandwich shop. Truly don't know how you mess up a sandwich, but he does. All that aside, let us see what Serafin has for us this evening.
Therapy, written and performed by Serafin the Midnight Bard. Did you have the dream again? My therapist asked, breaking the awkward silence that formed after I finished recapping my uneventful week. I exhaled sharply and bit my lip at the thought of it. The image was hard to forget. A big, thick door slams closed with a metallic thunk. I pound on it, begging to be let out. Laughter echoes all around me, then suddenly, I fall. It's literally the only dream I seem to have lately, I responded. He set his ice blue eyes on me and said nothing, which was a habit of his that I hated. I could feel the weight of his gaze boring into me as he tried to arrange the pieces of the puzzle that is me in his head. The clock seemed to tick extra slow as I waited for his response. I think there's a reason for that. And I think that you and I both know why it is, he said at last. His demeanor remained stony, and his eyes did not release me from their hold. I think we've danced around the subject long enough, Jason. My breaths became shaky. I don't know. Maybe there's something else. Jason, he said, the sound of my name bringing me to a full stop. You're not claustrophobic. You're not basophobic. You've lived a pretty privileged life. Unless there's some manner of trauma that you have yet to disclose, I think we both know why these dreams are happening. He was right. I knew he was right. I would have given anything for him to be way off base, but I couldn't fight the truth. Doc, The sentence died in my throat before I could finish it. My therapist sighed and put his pen down on his notepad. I can't help you unless you open up to me, Jason. You can come in here week after week telling me about how much you hate your job, how much your parents don't understand you, and how much you don't think you'll ever live out your dream of moving to the big city. But ultimately, you'd be paying me to be a sympathetic ear, and nothing more. The clock ticked away for what seemed like an eternity. On the first day you called my office, you told me you wanted to heal. And we've tackled everything except for the one thing that we both know you're here for. The thing that's been keeping you awake for weeks. The thing that's haunting you, even in your dreams. I know you're right, Doc, I said. But I don't know if I can do what we talked about last time we spoke of it. We both know that it's the first step, Jason. And if we're being honest, the imagery in the dream is pretty on the nose. Don't you think? I couldn't not think. The sound of the metal door. Being trapped, falling. It didn't take a licensed therapist to know that I was reliving the night of the accident in my dreams. Only instead of a car, I was in some manner of casket or something. Jason, why don't you walk me through the night of the accident again? My therapist asked neutrally. What's there to tell? I said. Me, Chris, and Ponyboy took my boss's Maserati for a joyride. I'd been locked in my office for 16 hours a day for almost a month, with maybe a day off a week. And I just snapped that day. I don't know what came over me, but I just snagged the keys from his desk while he was out banging the receptionist before he went home to his 6-figure mansion to pick up his wife and kids so they could head to the Bahamas for the weekend. I stopped for a moment. The more I talked about my boss and how disgusted I was by him, the more the saliva in my mouth started to taste acidic. This asshole comes in when he wants, leaves when he wants, fucks around while on the clock, shoves his work onto us, and will not hesitate to throw us under the bus when his bosses start questioning his incompetence. He makes 6 figures, gets several bonuses a year, has a big house, happy family, and even a mistress. Meanwhile, I can't even afford to pay attention. I had it. I grabbed the keys from his desk and told Chris and Ponyboy that we were going for a joyride while his sleazy ass was occupied. Tears were gushing uncontrollably from my eyes the more I spoke. My body began to shake, and I struggled to catch my breath. I remembered the laughter as we kicked the car into high gear. I remember Ponyboy taking selfies from the back seat. I remembered Chris nervously glancing at the clock and telling me that we should hurry back. "It's not fair," I said through shaking breaths. "We were practically slaves. All I wanted was one moment of freedom." My therapist remained stone still through all of my breakdown. I felt embarrassed as hell, collapsing into a weeping mess while he simply stared, saying nothing, his eyes calculating and cold. "There is something else," he said as I struggled to compose myself. "Something that we both know you refuse to mention, and perhaps the reason why you cannot move past this." "I flipped the car, Doc. I turned too sharply. I hit the curb. The car flipped, and we were all trapped inside," I said. "It's the sound of metal, the feeling of falling, and the desperate pounding on the door to get out." "Yes," he said slowly. "But accidents happen, Jason. People make stupid choices, and accidents happen every day. But you made another mistake beyond taking your boss's car for a joyride that day, didn't you?" The weight of his question felt as if it would crush me. My mouth felt bitter again, though the taste was different. "Your blood alcohol level was high, Jason. It was a miracle that you could stand, let alone drive." I spoke up after I couldn't take the ticking of the clock any longer. "My boss had a bottle of Crown sitting in the back seat. Probably a gift for a client or from one, I don't know. Ponyboy found it and jokingly said that we should open it. I did." It was a long while before my therapist spoke up again. Each tick of the clock made me sink deeper and deeper into myself. I was openly weeping now. The truth that I'd been refusing to admit was finally out, and I had confessed to it. One way or another, I was going to kill my friends that night. I made all the wrong choices and survived while they made one mistake in trusting me and died. "I think we've made a big breakthrough, Jason," my therapist said. "This whole time you've been carrying the weight of guilt, but refusing to acknowledge why. At least now that you've spoken it out loud, you can understand why it is that you're so tormented." "So, do you think the dreams will ease up now?" I asked. I felt something dig into my shoulder and all across my chest. It was tight and painful. My mouth felt sour once more, and it suddenly felt as if there was too much fluid in there, so much so that it was oozing out. I touched my hand to my lips and saw that the fluid was blood. "No, I'm afraid the dreams will continue, Jason." I suddenly felt very dizzy. The pressure on my chest pulled me back onto the couch. Except, it wasn't a couch. It was the plush leather driver's seat of the Maserati. You see, it only looks like a dream to you, but you don't ever remember going to sleep or waking up, do you? "What's happening? Doc!" I shouted. "During the last Reformation, the Ethics Committee decided that it's more humane that people own up to their misdeeds before we throw them into their eternal torment. So we sometimes have to apply a little pressure so we can get a confession before we get to the good part." Metal began to form around me, as if materializing from air. The sounds were reminiscent of the car slamming into the ground over and over.
It gathered and formed around me until it was as if I was encased in a metal coffin, held fast by seatbelts that had me bound so tight that I could barely move. "Oh, and by the way," my therapist said, his voice slowly becoming deeper and more guttural, "you never seem to recall the last part. In your dream, there's supposed to be fire at the bottom of the fall. But I guess you'll see it soon enough." The big, thick casket door slammed shut with a metallic thunk. I began to pound on it, begging to be let out.
Oh my, that story is one to give you nightmares. To forever be trapped in your worst mistake? Spine-chilling as always, Serafin. Makes me wonder what you or I would be trapped in. Well, best not think about it. And thank you, Serafin, for that story. Now let's continue on our way. Here we are now. This is Danie Dreadful. She's a creepypasta storyteller who loves to bring the most dreadful tales to life. With her alluring voice, sinister stories, but yet beautiful smile, it is no wonder she is called the Queen of Dread. She is a newer friend as well, so let's see what dread-filled tales she has for us this evening.
Seeing by Casey Were Alien, narrated by Danie Dreadful. I have a gift. More so an ability that I never asked for. It's been this way since I was a child. We aren't sure if it's genetic or a condition of my birth. I speak to, hear, and see the dead. I can also see how people are going to die and can dream of things that no one should know. You would think something like this would bring closure, allow you to say goodbye, confront your emotions in ways most people never get to experience. But that's nothing I experience. I've had to hide my abilities because of this misconception that everyone that sees must be crazy. We must have some schizo affect disorder. But that's not it. People like me, we don't hallucinate, we don't imagine this, and it's not a defect in the chemicals of our brain. But it isn't uncommon for us to have depression or anxiety. I mean, I was mentally sound enough that the military took me. You never know when you are going to wake up to a dead uncle. One who as a child you were told committed suicide, and you learn maybe your aunt's frivolous spending wasn't just a product of her mourning, but a motivation. When your high school friend supposedly died of a staph infection, but you can see the track marks as he sobs in front of you. When you look at your best friend and instead of her face, you see the bruises and where he's going to slit her throat. When you see in the news that a woman has gone missing, but her bloated form is sitting next to you, whispering where her husband threw her in the river. When you look at your shipmates and you see burns and protruding bones, a glimpse of a future they've accepted but dread. And you can't stop it. There's no turning off what I see, and there's no preventing it. I've tried. I've even gone as far as to take spark plug wires out of a friend's car I knew would drive drunk, but that didn't stop their girlfriend from handing them her keys. I've warned and pleaded, and even if I take away one mode of death, it's like the universe always has a backup plan. I can no longer take it. As I was getting ready to go out tonight, I looked in the mirror. Those who I had loved and gone before surrounded me as I touched my face, fingers passing through the shards of glass and metal. My hair was bloodied and matted, and I could see the emblem of the steering wheel pressed deep into my forehead. Looking to my husband, I could see where his ribcage was crushed by the dash. His forehead cracked, his eyes blank, and he spoke excitedly about our weekend plans. I've never been wrong. Never. But I refuse with every fiber of my existence to be the reason the world loses him. He was driving for our date, so I wasn't too concerned. I knew it would be me driving when it happened. He couldn't understand why I cried over our dinner and played it off as being emotional and PMSing. I love him far too much to tell him what I saw, even though he knows about my abilities and accepts them. Tonight, after he falls asleep, I'm going to the river. I have years of sleep aids that various doctors have prescribed me. I plan to take them all and slip into the water. I'm writing this because I know there are others like me, and because I'm sure people will question why I made my choices. But any time someone tries to warn you or tells you they have a bad feeling, please listen. I could never change anyone else's fate, but I am taking mine in my own hands. Maybe I never listened or tried hard enough, but you never know who is like me and who is trying to save you. I can hear my husband snoring, and I never thought I would relish the sound, but I don't have much time. Please heed my warning and listen to your instincts. You never know what waits around the corner for you, or how much time you have left.
Well, I truly believe Danie lived up to her name. That story was truly dreadful. To see anyone at any moment, at the moment of their death, and not be able to stop it. Heartbreaking. Thank you, Danie, for your story. Now let us continue this evening's tales. Now this is the Scary Show. As his name implies, he likes to tell scary stories, like all of the other storytellers here. But, like every storyteller, he has his own way of telling it. Now let's see what Scary has for us this evening.
Welcome to the 242 Reads 750 subscriber special. This story is called Ophelia, written and performed by The Scary Show.
Death does not part, only lack of love.
He thrust his spade into the hollowed ground. The tip of it bit down into the soil like Adam's teeth did the storied apple. Hungry and starving for her. Again and again, building up a rhythm, his tool thrust steadily, repeatedly, fueled by unshakable optimism. Oh, sweet Ophelia, the sound of her name on his breath, in awful contrast to the hum of the flies swarming around him, bumping into one another, drunk from his alcohol-laced sweat. 9, 10, his muscles tense, his shirt drenched. 26, 27, these damned mosquitoes, they never relent. 37, 38, must not keep her waiting, just work through the pain. It can't be much farther, can it? He thought to himself, after around the 40th spadeful of earth dug up and removed. In his heart and in his mind, she was lying there, waiting patiently for him, like Sleeping Beauty, breathless with anticipation of their reunion. He continues digging. 50, 60, 70 some odd measures of dirt removed, at least double that amount after, and more still to follow those. He digs until the spade hits the wood of her casket. Thunk. It is the sound of sweet affirmation. His weary, bone-driven muscles are reinvigorated. He attempts to wipe the sweat from his brow with an already soaked forearm, as useless an effort as attempting to drown a fish in water. Perspiration continued to burn his eyes. It doesn't take much longer before he is reunited with sweet Ophelia. There she lay, just as he last saw her, all dressed in white, like an angel, visiting the earth. Her hair was immaculate, every curl arranged perfectly. Her lipstick, rose pink, and it still tasted like cotton candy. Just a taste for now, he whispered into her ear before carefully placing her inside the car. He positioned her in the front passenger seat and strapped her in, snugly. A half-folded-up map of the area falls from the passenger side overhead visor. A path is marked, highlighting the road from what was to be their home to here, from sanctuary to sepulchre. Not that it mattered. He knew where he was going. The radio hinted at familiar tunes through the static, too distorted to decipher, mangled and merged meanings too distant to discern. Every set of headlights heralded another brush with death. Once familiar road signs were now squiggly hieroglyphs warning of the dangers he'd just ignored. He only had a quarter of a tank of gas and half a bottle of gin left by the time he reached the straightaway. There was no turning back. He would see to it that they would be together again. Nothing would separate them this time. Richie Valens ferried them through their sleepwalk via an old record player as they entered the living room. From the moment they passed by the empty mahogany china cabinet, it was clear that tonight was a special night. The dining room table was set with care, and provisions were made, enough for two. Red wine would flow like water. Glasses would never be empty, and assorted foods would cover the table, course by course. Jellies filled bellies, and the smell of garlic seasoned the air. She sat at one end of the table, patient and as still as stone. He sat at the other end, simultaneously guest and host, waiter and busser. The wedding gown she wore was beautiful, a shadow of its former glory, but undeniably magnificent. He could only see the eternally radiant beauty of her. "Can I tell you something?" he began, pausing momentarily to allow her time enough to reply. "You look absolutely ravishing tonight." He hung his head and bashfully took another sip of wine. He smiled as he began unbuttoning his shirt. The look in his eyes was craven. Rising from his chair slowly, it barely made a sound as its legs slid across the hardwood floor. His eyes remained focused on her as he cleared everything from the table onto the floor, making his way around it towards her. There was pink champagne on ice in the upstairs bedroom. The sheets on the bed were of satin, and the bathtub was filled with bubbles. No expense was spared, from the scented oils to pink feathered handcuffs. With the aid of 69 positions of the Kama Sutra manual, no fantasy would be too far-fetched. No feline nicknamed orifice too feral to be fucked. With an assortment of sensual surprises, the boudoir was a bordello of bohemian hedonism, but they never made it that far. He took her by the hand and made his conquest there on the dining room table. There was need for neither foreplay nor formality. He had been known to this woman countless times before, as intimate as only the most physical of physicians ever could. He unbuckled his pants and kissed her passionately as he climbed on top of her, with one hand beneath her hips and another slicked with his own saliva, curled into a fist, acting as a bridge between bodies. He licked and nibbled her ear. His manhood throbbed in the grip of his fist. He was convulsing in anticipation of their first contact. He was delicate about penetration, allowing her a moment to adapt to every pulsating inch. She made no sound to indicate discomfort. Once he found himself inside her, he relocated both his hands to her hips and began long stroking gyrations that led to multiple ejaculations and blissful moments of exasperation between erections. Deeper and deeper, just a little deeper each time. When the sensation comes, keep holding on. When the miracle comes, stay inside, take hold, and never let her go.
It seems the protagonist did not take Till Death Do Us Part very well. That story was truly disturbing, and I'm pretty sure will give me a few nightmares. Thank you, This Scary Show, for sharing your story with us. Now, let's continue with this evening. Oh, PA Nightmares is next. I was sure he was a bit later tonight. He might have skipped the line again. He is known to come into my home and do things like that. A storyteller of the dead, finding lost travelers and telling their tales. He has the cutest three-headed dog that I just love to pet. Though I do hope this story doesn't have a dog in it. But let us see. The Pendulum, written and narrated by PA Nightmares.
Left to right, the pendulum swings. It swings and swings until you feel fright. Left to right, the pendulum swings as you beg and plead to get free from your plight. Left to right, the pendulum swings long, long until the night. Left to right, the pendulum swings as you beg and plead until there is no more fight. There's a sound that I heard as I opened my eyes. The room was cold and dark. A faint dripping of water could be heard. Where am I? And how the hell did I end up here? My eyes slowly adjusted to my environment. I attempted to get up, but I found that I am strapped down to something and I cannot move. My heart rate quickens, but I calm myself down. If he wanted to hurt you, or for you to be dead, he would be so. Just stay calm and find a way out, I whispered to myself. Just as I finished reassuring myself, I can hear the slow, methodical footsteps of who I am sure is my captor. I knew this little trick. He is drawing up the game, trying to make me sweat in hopes of scaring me. Whatever he wants from me, he will not get. After a few long, tedious minutes, he finally walked down the stairs. I didn't wait for him to speak. Who are you? And what do you want? Shuttle games do not work on me, you half-wit. If you knew who I was, you would not be playing such games.
Oh, I know who I have, and trust me, what I have in store for you will make you beg for your life before the end,
he said in a cold and disinterested tone. I hear the flick of a light switch, and blinding white light comes on. As my eyes finally adjust, I can see what was causing the swooshing sounds. It was a massive pendulum that had a blade attached to it. He actually laughed. What the hell is that? That is a new one indeed. What do you think? We are in some fucking Saw movie? You gonna give me a way to escape so I can learn some big life lesson? Oh god, this is pretty fucking pathetic. My would-be abductor came into the light, and I finally got to see the face of the person who made the ultimate mistake. Look, man, you don't know what you just stepped in. Suppose you let me go now, no harm, no foul. I will leave, and we can just chalk this up to a bad day for everyone. I said calmly, and in as a friendly tone as the circumstances would allow. The other man just laughed, a cold, bitter laugh.
That's pretty funny. Why the fuck would I let you go? My employers told me you're a piece of shit, and the world would be better without you. Plus, the amount I'm getting paid tells me I'm better not fucking over my employers.
My eyebrows raised a bit at the word employers. So you're telling me that someone has paid you to what? Torture info out of me and then kill me? Got some bad news for you, buddy. I will never tell you anything you want to know. And if I did, your employers, as you called them, would make sure you disappeared. Which you have to know if you're not a fucking moron. My abductor looked at me, studying me carefully.
Why the hell would my employers kill me? They hired me to do a job. So long as I keep my mouth shut, they'll pay me and leave me be.
He said this proudly, like he had already thought of it, and had revealed some big truth to me I was too stupid to see. Fucking moron. Right, got it, I said absent-mindedly to him. He walks over and gets in my face.
Listen, you fucking piece of shit. You're not in charge here, and I suggest you stop talking before I get pissed off. I would not want to kill you too soon.
Look, man, I don't have the use of my hands to get rid of that smell. So, if you're gonna stand that close to me, can you either brush your teeth or not stand so close? Your breath smells like you just got done licking a dog's ass. The indignant look that crossed his face was comedy gold. Till he grabbed two of my fingers and snapped them like they were twigs. I let out a scream that he muffled with his hands. A sick smile crossed his face.
You were saying, you smug bastard?
I was saying that you're a mama's boy, that you got torture information from a teenager that was wetting himself.
Oh, we will see about that,
he said with a smile on his face. He walked over and pressed a button.
You seem to have forgotten about the little toy I rigged up,
he said as he looked up at the swinging pendulum. The button he pressed caused it to slowly lower. After he pressed the button, he said that it would take some time to reach us, so until then, we could either have a more civilized chat, or he would have some more fun, and it was up to me to choose. Sighing, I asked, so what do your employers want to know? I'm sure there's not much they don't already know about me. He looked at me.
Well, I misled you a bit. I have questions for you. My employers just told me to kill you, never said how or how fast. So, I'm going to have a bit of fun.
Oh, I said, my interest peaked for the first time in this whole tedious exchange. Well then, ask your questions and get on with it. Talking to you has caused me to lose brain cells that I can't afford to lose. Anger crossed his face, and he walked over to a table that had some tools on it. He grabbed a pair of pliers and returned to my side. A dark expression crossed his face as he spoke next.
Well, if you're going to keep your tough guy act up, then I will just have to start taking pieces of you every time you smart off to me.
He grabbed the other hand and started slowly removing my fingernails. I screamed as he did so, but I swear that only caused him to slow down and enjoy it more. After he had removed my fingernails on the left hand, he doused my hand in alcohol and wrapped my hand poorly, I might add. After I no longer saw spots and collected myself, I asked, "What the hell was that? I thought you were here to kill me, not bandage me up. Don't tell me you're too incompetent to do the one job you have here." A dark and harsh laugh left his pursed lips, something I only heard from the worst of the worst, and it finally made sense. After he finished his cold laugh, he did reply,
Oh, come on. Now you know the answer. I don't need you blacking out or bleeding out until I had my fun. But time for a question of my own. Why do my employers want you dead so bad? What is so special about you?
I looked at my hand and could feel it burning. I looked up at him and answered him. They want me because I fucked their mothers. Yours is next. He walked over and squeezed the hand that he just ripped the nails off of and asked me again.
Why the fuck do they want me to kill you?
I don't know. I don't know who the fuck hired you. He just looked at me and spoke 2 words.
The corporation.
I thought back to how I used to work for them. I was not a hunter or collector, but I did do research on the subjects they brought in. That was until they turned against me. I had to run, kept a low profile, and yet somehow they found me. I heard my abductor's voice draw me back to reality.
So, do you need more motivation? Or will you tell me why they want you dead so bad?
I used to work for them in the labs, and I learned what they were truly doing. They came at me to kill me, but I escaped. I assumed they want me dead, to clean up any loose ends. He looked thoughtful and spoke again.
That makes sense, but I feel like there's more to the story. Tell me everything. Time is ticking away.
He looked up at the pendulum that had gotten much closer. Look, I have told you all I know. Maybe they think I know something I don't. Or maybe they just sent your dumbass on an errand, so they'd be rid of you for a bit. Either way, you are wasting what little time I have left. Could you shut up and just let me die in peace? This earned me getting the nails ripped off of my other hand. The pointless questions continue until the pendulum got so low he could no longer stand near me without risking his own well-being. He watched it, and without looking at me, he asked,
Any last words? Make them quick. You don't have long.
Just mark my words. You will die before the night's end. The company is not to be trusted. And as for why they want me dead, you'll find out soon enough. Well, it looks like it's time for death again. I whispered this last part, and my abductor asked me what I said, but it was too late. The pendulum had reached me and started to slice through my midsection. This death was slow and painful. I probably choked on my own blood, long before the blade had finished cutting through my abdomen. Soon enough, my world was bathed in blackness. I always referred to this world as the waiting room. I sat down and waited the inevitable resurrection. No matter how many times this happened, I never stayed dead for too long. It's always surprising that they never send their lapdogs to capture me, just to kill me. I'm starting to wonder what they are learning from my deaths. Time passed by slowly in the waiting room, but it was always so peaceful and gave me a place to clear my head. And just like that, I am back inside my body. Well, it looks the same, but it's a new body all the same. My soon-to-be former abductor is standing with his back to me on the phone with the corporation.
Yes, he is dead. Yes, his body did burn up. How long did it take? Roughly around 30 minutes to combust. What do you mean longer than last time?
As he finished that, I walked behind him and slit his throat. I picked up the phone and spoke to the person on the other end. Your dog is dead. Put another one of them down. I don't know what you're doing and why you're studying me, but it stops now. I'm going to come for you. I will bring the fight to you, and I will destroy you. Mark my words. They spoke to me after I stopped talking. Ah, Phoenix. I am so glad to hear from you. Honestly, you save us so much money killing our retrievers. But I must admit, you're getting slower to resurrect yourself. I wonder why that is. Does this mean, after a certain amount of deaths, you stay dead? How does one truly kill a phoenix? After all, this is what we want to know. Maybe we will bring you in next time. Till we meet again, have a good life. He ended the call, and I left ready to start my mission. I will find and end the vile corporation. No more will I run. It's time to bring the fight to them.
Well, I guess this one did have a dog in it. Sort of. It is truly hard to keep a phoenix down. Beautiful and powerful creatures that are not to be trifled with. Those men have no idea what they are truly in for. Thank you, PA, for your story. Now please follow me. Now this is who I expected next. This is Gamma Akutabi. He likes more bleak stories in his wasteland. He is also a bit of a nerd at times, though, to be fair, I could say that about a few other storytellers you have already met. Oh, which ones? Well, you have to go back to their realms to find out, but not yet. First, let's see what Gamma has for us this evening.
In World War II, my grandfather saw something in the Japanese tunnels. Written by Deleted User. Narrated by Gamma Akutabi. My grandfather served in World War II in the Australian Army in 1944. He has a few stories about the war, but he had one that scared the living daylights out of me. Our story begins in 1944. My grandfather and his units were sent to an island. His unit was ordered to sabotage, not to capture the island. The reason behind this was because this particular island served as a communication tower between ships and planes for the Japanese Empire in the south. My grandfather's unit's job was to blow up the main tower to disrupt Japanese communications. The signals will be weak in the south if this tower was destroyed. As my grandfather's unit arrived on the island, they found nothing but silence. They expected some kind of resistance once they arrived, but instead they found nothing. This was confusing, but they continued the mission. As they slowly made their way through the jungle to the main tower, they began to realize something was majorly wrong. They didn't see any Japanese soldiers on the island. They suspected that maybe they were all hiding, but even if they were hiding on the island, that would mean they were preparing for an attack. However, since they were close to the main tower, the Japanese would have attacked by now. But orders were orders, and the unit moved on towards the tower. They set explosives and hid in defensive positions, waiting for the enemy to attack once the main tower exploded. Once the unit was ready, boom! The tower exploded. My grandfather's unit waited, and waited, and waited. Nothing. At this point, the whole unit was absolutely confused. The Japanese soldiers should have arrived by now, so why didn't they? They began to come up with theories, with the most popular theory being that the Japanese were hiding, ready to ambush them. However, if that was the case, they wouldn't have let the unit blow up the tower. This left more questions among the unit. Even the soldier in charge was so confused that he even was unable to come up with a plan of action. Realizing that something was wrong, they all felt it was too unsafe to leave the island because of another theory, that the Japanese must have captured a boat that the unit arrived on. And that's why they haven't arrived at the tower, because the soldiers were already waiting for them. So the unit began to search the island for clues, and as soon as they got closer to the main Japanese camp, they began to have more questions than answers. The camp was completely destroyed, bodies ripped apart, and huts that the soldiers were clearly sleeping in broken apart as if something large bursted into them. It was clear that the Japanese soldiers on the island were attacked, but the question was by who or what, since they were the only soldiers on the island, and in their briefing, they weren't told on any large wildlife that could be a threat to them. My grandfather's unit decided to enter the camp just to get a little more information, but not to stay too long because the whole situation was confusing, and they were not prepared for this. As the unit was searching, my grandfather and another soldier named Thomas saw a small cave nearby. Thinking that this cave must have been used by the Japanese, they decided to enter, hoping to both get clues as well as possibly being able to grab a souvenir, since the majority of the stuff at the camp is damaged or could have been taken there by fellow soldiers. As the two entered the cave, they soon began to find skeletons of small animals and even more dead bodies of Japanese soldiers that were clearly dragged in the cave. Realizing they have found themselves in a bad situation, the two soldiers began to walk out of the cave. As the two reached the mouth of the cave, my grandfather looked back to see a grey human-like creature with large yellow eyes hiding behind one of those dead bodies looking at them. This spooked him enough to grab Thomas and run out of the cave. My grandfather quickly insisted to the others in the unit that they have to leave now. Thankfully, the unit listened to him and left the island, and grandfather didn't tell anyone about what he saw besides Thomas, who didn't believe him as he didn't see the creature. So my grandfather shut his mouth and only told the family what he saw. All he knows is that since the mission was technically a success, despite the weirdness, nobody looked into it and left the island alone. Who knows what happened before my grandfather and his unit arrived? And what is that creature?
A creature with yellow eyes that will eat almost any meat and super strong, it seems. I wonder if it could be a Wendigo. Maybe that's just me overthinking it. Either way, it's best to leave and never go back. Thank you, Gamma, for your tale this evening. Now, let's see who's next. Oh, it's Vex's turn. I was sure he should have been here sooner, but maybe I messed something up. He's here now. Vex makes all of his own tales. They are all in the same world and grow on each other. He even has art that is made by a beautiful lady behind the scenes. If you like stories that build on each other, he'll be a great teller for you. Now let's see what he has for us this evening, shall we? Chaya, written and narrated by Dr. Vexi.
The blaze of heat. The sun is a very common sight where I am. My name is Jericho, and I am a cat, a tabaxi, a friendly one if you will, and the best one that you will meet, yes? I am orange and white, like a tiger, and I am rather large and wear a blue cloak. I must give you a little inkling of background before I delve into the horror of what I did. Currently, I reside in a town called Sturk. Sturk is an arid town notorious for struggling with resources. The majority of the architecture consists of gloriously gargantuan cactuses that grow around the settlement. Some of the main population consists of the staggering Tabaxi tribes that have branched out from Sekhmet, the Gavadal, and the various fire dragonborn who have adapted to the heat, the thorns, and the sand. Stark is a small town with a population of 3,500, consisting of primarily Tabaxi and Dragonborn. Along with these individuals spark the Beryllium Dragonborn, a native and exclusive to the Stark colonies. The species of mutant cactus that inhabit the area is called the gift knoll, where contact with the plant will cause the needles to jump and cling to one's body. If exposed for too long, the needles will inject a hallucinatory toxin that will inebriate the victim. This may cause the creature to wander off into the desert, desperate for water. They will shortly die, and the needles will begin to sprout out of the blood and moisture from the body. You see, the Beryllium Dragonborn is of their larger ancestor beasts who resided in huge mother clusters of the crop. The dragons were around the size of elephants and fed exclusively off of calcium, the bones of the fallen creatures. They mutually lived together as a habitat and food source. Whether the cactus or the dragon killed a potential threat to food source did not particularly matter too much. The plant would harvest the moisture from the body, and the dragon would feed off of the bones. They are almost entirely immune to the poison and needles, living in a primarily symbiotic relationship. Yes? You see, we have quite a few landmarks around here. One of the more notable ones is the Giftnall Barrier. This is an organic wall of Giftnall cactus that acts as a defense system for the town. The walls are approximately 25 feet tall and 10 foot thick. The gates have been carved into the plant material as a safe entrance into the town. There are two gates, the eastern and the western gate. The western is the most utilized since it is the direction of Sekhmet, the major Tabaxi capital in the Denji Desert, in the western half of Cal. The royalty here is in a place called the Prickle Palace. This is one of the large Giftnall clusters in the colony. This is the central building for the royal family that is in charge of operating the town. This building is approximately 95 foot tall. This is the mother cluster for the majority of the buildings in the town. It was the Beryllium royal family that cultivated the ability to grow a town from the roots up. Literally. Their natural resistances to the Giftnall granted them a boon to harnessing the potential of the organic assassin. Currently, it is run by King Crom Rock, a royal Beryllium Dragonborn. As far as important things go in Sturk, there are a few. There is a Beryllium Dragonborn statue. This is a statue in the center of the market district depicting the great Gift Drage, the very first dragon of its kind. This is a statue made out of oxidized copper, making it a metallic green, similar to the ancestor that it depicts. It is approximately 9 foot tall. There is the Garrison of the Dark Knight. This is the military headquarters for the Tabaxi troops appointed from the nearby capital of Sekhmet. These are some of the most skilled fighters in the world. They are loyal, powerful, and disciplined. Threats are dealt with professionally and swiftly. There is the Sturk groundwater well. This is a grand hole in the center of town it has a pool of water at the bottom of it. There is a bucket system implemented for retrieval, however there is not a lot left. Swimming is punishable by death. Pissing in it is punishable by death. So, as far as religion goes, generally all of the good 16 are accepted here, but it's primarily the evil knight Sekhmet, the evil bishop Set, the good knight Ixen, and the good pawn Sol. The Temple of Sekhmet is a beautiful building dedicated to the worship of the warlord Sekhmet. Many of the soldiers will frequent here, as they worship her as the goddess that she is. This is also the training ground for the troops. There is also the Shrine of Ixen, brazen with gold. This shrine is to the great dragon that is a symbol of heritage to the Dragonborn here. Many gold pieces are at the base and are well protected by the Tabaxi and Dragonborn military. Religion is very important to the townspeople. There is also the Soul Shrine. This is a shrine dedicated to the Denji god of the sun. The heat is worshipped, but the prayers are made for mild light. The shrine is a large black tower with a chunk of emerald at its eye. At a certain point of the day, the sun will shine through the crystal and reflect off of the eyes of the beryllium dragon statue in the center of town. Both will glow. This is considered a sacred event. It is very, very beautiful. And finally, you have the crazy acolytes at the altar of Set. This is a sacrificial altar dedicated to the pleas of Set. Many of the acolytes will make toxic offerings to the Great Snake as a way of bargaining for resistance to the poisons around them, should they fall victim to the gift law. They will also perform tolerance offerings as rites to survival. Some individuals will purposely ingest poisons and survive as proof of dedication. This location has a building adjacent to the shrine that acts as the local infirmary. While Set is one of the evil gods, the royal family bargain for their allowance on the unique knack for antidotes and understanding how poisons will affect the body. The acolytes are incredible healers and act as the poison control for Sturk. Now that we have talked about where I am visiting, let's talk about where I am from. A wild jungle called Cleango. I kid, we will not. I have come to talk to you about my sins, but at the same time, my dedication to my god. I do not worship any of the common gods around here in Sturk. In fact, I do not worship any of the gods, good or evil. You see, it started with my sister. Her name was... well, it's not important, but I did love her all the same. She was a very sweet Tabaxi catfolk who traveled with me north past the icky jungle, then through the desert. We were monks from the same monastery and became traveling nomads. Now, my fingers are sometimes sticky, and we found ourselves risking the high life for a good drink and room for the, how should I say, borrowing of someone's wallet? But that's not as important. I did not kill anyone, and I hurt them in any way, but I am capable of that and will do so in order to protect myself and my sister. I do not condone the murder of individuals in any way, shape, or form. Well, at least I was up until this story. Anyway, my sister was mysterious, extremely intelligent, and somehow found a way to earn huge amounts of gold while we landed here in Sturk. I asked her over and over how and why, but I did not get anything from her. She was turning cold, despite the horrific heat and drippy sweat that us cats get often. Either way, the buildings around here are of adobe huts and cactus, so we just so happen to apparently be staying at a place that offers the finest of linens and food that an inn can offer for us. Sort of a noble high life. One of these nights, I stood atop our porch and stared out into the moon. It was very dark and very cold on this night, where I found myself asking out to the gods for the very first time for answers to what the heck my sister is doing that we are living as we are. I remember, I say out, for anyone who can hear me. That's right, I am talking to a god, I think. Maybe? Who knows? Maybe the hobos downstairs can heal me and maybe could help. It is not that I am complaining about how nice we are doing at the moment. However, I would like to know exactly how and why we are how we are, if you catch my drift. Now, this is an open-ended question because I do not know how the gods work. So if someone could give me something here... I gave a simple smile out there and waited a few moments. I blink once or twice and chuckle, heading on inside with a tad bit of defeat in my attempt to convene with the supernatural. Just then, the room began to grow darker, the shadows more sinister as they grow and arch over me as a child's nightmare would fantasize. A sickly pale white arm with thick blue veins punches its way through the wall, creating a small burst of dust. The hand expands and pulls back towards the wall, grabbing at the edge of the hole, and starts tearing chunks of the wall into itself. It does so until a sizable hole, maybe the size of a bucket, is present. As 5 more hands emanate from the hole and start tearing larger chunks of the wall into itself, all the way up to the ceiling, creating a doorway to nothing but pure darkness. The abyss. A second goes by as dozens of pale, white arms protrude out of the abyss and start scratching at the wall with their fingernails, carving out what looks to be the shape of archway bricks. The fingernails on these arms are sharp and jagged, eventually wearing down to their fleshy tips, where they continue scratching away at the wall, causing the skin on their fingers to wither away and bleed to the bone, where they continue carving, covering what they've made in smeared tracks of blood and carvings of different eldritch and abyssal symbols. I hear screams of men, women, and children, cries of pain and agony in the distance coming from this doorway. When the arms finish scraping away bits of wood and stone, they begin reaching out, smacking different parts of the wall around the doorway that it made, leaving dents and handprints of blood, grabbing anything it can, vases, backpacks, where it pulls it into the darkness. There is a voice, a cacophony of hundreds of voices into one, sending a shiver down my spine. Sweet child of darkness, I have heard your prayers. For the answer that you seek, there is a price. You must obey. In doing so, you will have my favor. Do you wish to please me? Now, I was taken aback. This was kind of disgusting and honestly not my forte. However, there was a potent curiosity underneath my fur that made me want to say yes. So I did say yes. And by golly, I should not have said yes, because very shortly after, a thin white needle flies out of the doorway and embeds itself into my chest. My first thought was, holy shit. My next thought was, well, damn. My final thought was, what did I just get myself into? This was bad, and nothing good can come from this. Rather quickly, my blood began to grow cold, and my stomach dropped to my butt. I felt sick, as though a part of me was dying. Maybe the whole part of me. I began to feel as though my tummy was being eaten, like many bugs made its way inside of me and was gnawing away at the flesh within my body. The doorway began to speak once more. You will kill the one you call Rays of the Sun, or in 24 hours you will die. Do this and your wish will be granted. Ignore me and you'll learn. Well, shit, I totally forgot that I was keeping my sister's name out of the story. But in any case, this totally defeats the purpose of what I wanted. I don't want to kill her. What? This is madness. A fool's game. And I am a fool. Without being able to respond, the hands retreat back into the doorway and it fades away in a puff of smoke. What the fuck am I supposed to do now? I don't want to seem selfish immediately ending her life, but then again, who am I to throw away my life at the prospect of a dumb decision that I made? I hate this circumstance, but I think that I need to own my actions and follow through with the nightmares and gut-wrenching torture I am to live with for the rest of my life. That's what my father would have told me to do. I am so sorry, Harry, but I have done an injustice to our blood. I have made a mistake, and it will be you who is the victim. Over the next few hours of mulling the pestilence and weeping into myself over the chaos that is my life, I waited patiently for my sister to come home. I do not know of the time. My sister will watch over me in the afterlife and spit on my path, damning me at every opportunity for my betrayal. But I am the fool who must reap the consequence. I love you, Ray. I hear your footsteps now. I hold my breath for you behind the door, waiting and listening. It will be quick, but it will not be pretty. I will bury you at the monastery and spread deceit about your death. You died protecting me. You deserve to be mourned over a heroic lie and then pitied over a betrayal and both of us ruined. Maybe that part is the selfish part. You walk through the door now, at peace, hoping for a good night's rest. Your gold and white fur glistens under the pale moonlight. You are beautiful, even in death, as my knuckles strike your spine and neck. My soul bleeds as I channel my ki into your body, overloading your senses as the gushing, popping sound indicates that your eyes have detonated and your brain is leaking into my hands. I love you so much, Ray. You were my everything. The doorway appears once more, releasing distant screams into the room that reverberates around the stone. Very well. Your sister was the inventor of a drug she calls the Fictional needle. You are an agent of Chaya now. So, it turns out, a needle from the Fictional cactus has other properties to it that are able to be harnessed. Normally, many of those needles are a defense against potential predators, acting as a venomous hallucinatory death. However, just one of these needles, spiked with the blood of an arachnid and honey, may be used as an addictive injected drug. Upon injecting this drug, the user may experience severe dehydration and may see things that are not of this realm for a few hours, spiked with vile hallucinations. It is said that you may see into another plane of existence. Things are illusionary, and things that are invisible, and has the potential to kill horrifically. Should you survive, you are subjected to short-term madness and paranoia for a few days as your other sight begins to fade. The user will experience extreme addiction and must seek out the nearest source of Fictional needles. My sister was the kingpin in harming and killing an extreme amount of people. The folks at the altar of Set were already into injecting poison, so they were her first customers. So, it seems as though I have done the world a favor. I will miss her, but I now work for the Mistress of Shadows. I will make you proud.
Never wise to just reach out to anything. Those of higher powers that mean to do you harm will always be the first to reach out to you. Though it does seem his sister was also doing harm. A ray of sunshine that became black as night. Pity, really. Thank you, Vex, for your story. We have 2 more stories this evening, so let's see our second to last. Here we are, Miss Creepytales, or MCT as everyone calls her. She's another mage who loves to share stories. I would never get on her bad side, though. I have a feeling you would end up something she could eat. She just loves talking about food. Don't ever hide a Kit Kat around her. She can smell them a mile away. Now let's see what story she has for us this evening.
I'm an urban explorer, and I'll never forget what I found in an abandoned factory. By U/Neptune, narrated by Miss Creepytales. My name is Wyatt. I'm 21 now, but this story happened last winter when I was still 20. I am an urban explorer and nature photographer. That is about as much detail I'll go into about myself because I don't want anybody coming after me if they found out what I've seen. I know, I will never forget what I saw, but I can't risk telling anyone that I know. I am not currently under any immediate danger, but there are too many unknowns. Back in early December of last year, I was looking through Instagram and saw some shots from an abandoned factory in Germany. This place was so perfect. It was rusting and old but still kept the same structure and shape as when it was in use. Some of the pictures were breathtaking, mountain views through decrepit old windows, things like that. I screenshotted and reverse image searched one of the pictures from Instagram and found a place in Germany. There was no name for the factory anywhere I looked, but I kept seeing the town it was in was called Westgen. I looked it up on Google Earth and saw that it was a mountainous region in northern Germany. And as I swiped through the images on Google, one article stopped me. It claimed that the factory was going to be demolished in April of next year, meaning it would be gone in just a few months. I was feeling impulsive and excited, so without thinking, I Googled flights to Berlin. Looking back, I wish my phone would have died at that very moment. Anything to stop me from looking at flights. I would do anything to go back and make me close that tab. However, I found one flight leaving from my airport that Wednesday, and it was only $600. I was just about to buy the tickets when I remembered that my friend Bryce, which is not his real name, was looking for somewhere to go for winter break. So, I called him up and told him that there were tickets to Berlin for $600. I wish he would have talked me out of it, but instead, he was all over the idea. Later that afternoon, we both bought our tickets and planned to leave on Wednesday. Adrian, also not his real name, was also coming with us, but was going to leave early on Saturday to go see his family in Poland. Me and Bryce made plans to go to Westgen on Sunday and look around there for a few hours. So when Wednesday came, I packed all of my stuff, camera lenses, SD cards, respirator, flashlights, clothes, and met up with Bryce and Adrian. And we took an Uber to the airport and quickly boarded the plane. Honestly, I don't remember most of the flight. I think I slept through most of it. But finally, we arrived in Berlin. Honestly, for the next few days, it was just a normal vacation, nothing but sightseeing and doing basic tourist things. On Saturday, we said our goodbyes to Adrian and he left for Poland. That night I made sure to get all my stuff ready for the next morning. We had a 2-hour car ride from Berlin to Westchen. I was hoping we would get there around 2 in the afternoon and explore until about 8 that night. Playing it back in my head, I remember every little detail of that day. I remember the sound of my alarm, the excitement of waking up that day, the feeling of seeing all my stuff packed neatly on the floor next to my bed. We got up and had breakfast in the hotel lobby before walking to the car rental place. We picked out a blue Chevy from the lot and the guy gave us the keys. I spent the next few hours driving through the green rolling hills of Germany until we finally got there. I felt nothing but excitement when we finally got into the town. I remember just driving and looking around for a while until we saw it there, clear as day, the abandoned factory. It sat at the bottom of a tall hill in the middle of a bright green field. The mountains were in the distance to the east opposite the factory. I started looking on Google Maps for a good place to park in order for us to walk there. There was a large parking lot next to a self-storage place that was only about a quarter mile from the factory. I pulled into one of the spots and looked around for people. "Should be good," I told Bryce. I grabbed my camera bag, my flashlight, and my respirator out of the back seat and put it all on. For those of you who don't know, a lot of old buildings were built with toxic materials like asbestos, so it's just safer to not even risk it and wear the respirator. We began walking down this old cracked asphalt road that has grass and flowers growing through it. It led straight to the factory, which I remember finally having a good view of. It was brown and rusted, but still beautiful and majestic. It had plants growing in it, like it had been retaken by nature after the people left it. And after a little walking, we reached a tall chain-link fence that was locked. But there was no barbed wire on top, so I considered just jumping it. But instead, I decided to look for an easier way. After walking next to the fence, I saw part of it had been knocked from the metal frame by somebody else. We pushed the metal out of the way and just crawled through it onto the other side. Now, we just had to get into the factory. It was already clear to me that the main entrance wasn't an option. It probably had motion sensors anyway. And I was looking around when I spotted it. A broken window. It was only about 10 feet off the ground, so I asked Bryce to help me up. He hoisted me up, and I grabbed onto the windowsill. I pulled myself up and through the window frame, pushing aside the broken glass as I did so. I pulled Bryce up through the window, and we both jumped down on the ground inside the factory. Now, when I say this thing was massive, I mean massive. Like probably the biggest single room I have ever seen. It had so many levels and catwalks and bridges. This place was a gold mine. I immediately got out my camera and put on my 16-35 lens and my best flash. I also put in a new SD card just in case. We walked around the ground floor a bit, mostly just looking up at the ceiling. And I took one picture of all the catwalks and bridges leading up to the crack in the ceiling, letting sunlight through. We went up one of the staircases onto the second level. There were a ton of generators and turbines all over the place, with a thick layer of dust and rubble covering them. I took some pictures on this floor, but we quickly moved up to the next floor. It was more of the same stuff, but still beautiful. I walked to the edge of the floor and looked over the small balcony-like platform we were on. I immediately felt dizzy, looking all the way down to the ground level. I'm used to that kind of stuff. I just didn't realize how high up we were. We climbed up the stairs to the next floor when Bryce told me to look at the mountains out the window. That was the shot from Instagram that I wanted. I adjusted my settings and snapped the shot. I checked over them just to make sure it was good because that's pretty much the reason I came here. Even though I'm explaining this all very quickly, we did spend hours wandering around this place and looking at every little detail. We eventually got to some sort of control room. It must have had hundreds of different switches and buttons, all labeled with German words that I couldn't read, or seemingly random numbers. It was made clear from a thick layer of dust that this stuff hadn't been used in decades probably. That being said, I know I shouldn't have done this, but I took a small silver key from the control room as a souvenir. We left the control room and saw a ladder that went up at least 2 stories. It led straight up onto the roof of the factory. I hesitantly decided to climb it, but Bryce said he'd do it if I did it first. The ladder wobbled from side to side as I hesitantly climbed up the steel bars. And finally, I grabbed onto the roof and pulled myself up onto it. "You'll be fine if you go slow," I yelled down at him. Soon, he joined me up on the roof, and we looked out on the rest of the world. It was just endless rolling green hills leading to the snow-capped mountains. I turned around and looked behind us, and realized that the hill behind us was taller than the factory itself. If we could get to that hill before sunset, the picture would be unbelievable. I really wish I had just abandoned the area, but instead, we rushed back down the ladder and all the staircases to the ground level. We quickly leapt out of the window and crawled through the fence, and we walked across the grassy green fields and slowly walked up the tall green hill. I won't lie, it was tiring walking all the way up that hill, racing the sunset, and when we finally got there, it was totally worth it. The factory, the mountains, and the sunset all mashed together in this beautiful vista. I took out my tripod and lined up the composition. When I finally snapped the shot, I took 9 or 10 of the same exact picture just to make sure I got it. It was incredible. But if I could, I would go back in time and leave that hill immediately. But unfortunately, Bryce looked behind us and pointed out another abandoned building to me. It was smaller, made of brick rather than steel. He was hesitant to go down there and checked it out because it was getting late. I assured him we would be fine with the flashlights and we wouldn't be long. We walked back down the other side of the hill and over to the dilapidated brick building. By the time we got there, it was getting pretty dark already, but we had flashlights that worked fine. The only weird thing was that when we walked up to it, the gate was unlocked, like they weren't even trying to keep people out. I guess it was pretty hard to find, but still. We walked straight through the gate, and I was scanning the area for motion sensors or alarms, but there was nothing. The same exact thing when we got to the front door. No lock, no bar, nothing. We moved open the metal door, but it was heavy, hard for either of us to even move. We entered the building and it was dark. Super dark. I immediately had to turn on my flashlight to even be able to see. The building looked more of the same, catwalks, machines, and the overall same vibe. But there was a large circular door directly in front of us. It looked more like an entrance to a bank vault than any normal door you would find. At this point, I was stunned that we hadn't seen a single alarm or motion sensor in this place. We were both immediately drawn to the vault door, and I put my hand on it in awe. I had never seen anything like this in all places that I have explored. It was barely cracked open, not open all the way, but definitely not closed. I put my hand in between the door and the wall and tried to pry it open. It slowly moved open, showing us what was inside. There was a long circular tunnel that just led to another room. So far, this was looking like one of the best finds for me ever. I took multiple pictures looking down that long hallway, the flash lighting up the area, and we slowly walked down the hallway, flashlights in hand, as we advanced towards the room at the end. When we got to the end of the hallway, there was another vault door that was swung all the way open. We walked through the open door into the room. It was seemingly empty, except for a small hatch leading into the ground. It was closed, but the lock and chain on it were broken. Above it, there was an arrow pointing at the hatch that said, Project Nachtwolfen. At that time, I had no idea what it meant. I didn't even take a second to put it into Google Translate. Nowadays, the words still send a chill down my spine. Project Nightwolf. A phrase that sounds like nothing, but if you had seen what I've seen, you wouldn't be able to hear those words without shuddering. I slowly opened the hatch, the hinges squeaking as I did so. I flipped it all the way over until it was on the other floor. I shined my flashlight down the hatch to reveal what looked like just a normal staircase. We began slowly descending down the stairs, and as we got closer to the bottom, you could hear the drops of water hitting the floor and making a quiet sound. I was going first, ahead of Bryce, so I saw it first. A room that was all pitch black, with about 2 inches of water lining the whole floor came into my sight. What horrified me were the piles of animal skeletons and bones lying in the water, small rodents that had been mutilated, and sheep that had been torn apart. Some were just the skeletons, but others still had decaying, rotten flesh, but it looked like they had been ripped apart, some of them torn perfectly in two. I struggled to hold back my vomit as the smell hit me. I was firing off my camera flash, taking pictures all around us, when I spotted another door just ahead of us. I remember Bryce telling me that we should just leave, but I wanted to go to that last door. The room was made out of cement. Stone pillars sat around the room, although some of them looked like they were about to collapse. We finally got to the door and I opened it, and it looked like just another control room, like the ones in the factory. The thing that was different, though, was there was swastikas on a lot of the equipment and walls. Not ones that had spray painted on by some kids, but real-looking ones. It was as if this place hadn't been touched since World War II. I looked around at some of the buttons and stuff until I saw a journal. I opened it to find that, unsurprisingly, it was in German, but I stuffed it in my pocket to take home. Just then, I heard the sound of broken glass. Not like somebody dropping a wine glass, but like an entire window was just shattered all at once. I immediately turned off my flashlight and Bryce slammed the door behind us. We both knelt down, breathing as silently as possible, not wanting to know what that sound was. Thoughts rushed through my head, possibly a bird, a mountain lion, but neither of those were even possible. We sat in that room for about a full minute until I realized that it was probably just because of how old this room was. Some structural error or rotting metal probably caused it. I worked up enough courage to go out there, and Bryce said that he would go if I opened the door first. I walked over to the door, still crouched on the ground, and I turned the handle. I slowly creaked the door open, and as if we were in a horror movie, my flashlight died. I was too committed at this point to go back, so I did the only thing I could think of. I grabbed my camera and started blindly firing off the flash. I could only do it about every 3 seconds, but I slowly creeped further and further out into the room. And that's when I saw it. It looked like a shadow crouched on the ground, but about 10 feet away from me was this oily, black skeleton-like creature. It slowly stood up, making cracking and crunching sounds as it did so. Its limbs snapped back and forth like they were breaking, and when it finally got all the way up, I saw its mangled set of razor-sharp teeth lining a huge gash in its face. It was at least 9 feet tall with its head almost hitting the ceiling. It was holding the body of a fox in its lanky, disguising arms. It ripped the fox into two as it let out a horrifying, ear-piercing screech. My flash stopped firing, and I looked down at my camera to see the message. SD card full. I quickly grabbed the one in my pocket and switched them out, but when I fired the flash again, the creature was gone. Had I just imagined it? I felt paralyzed, when suddenly, it grabbed me by my neck. Its hand felt wet and sharp as it pulled me towards it. Bryce immediately ran for the door, and I don't blame him for it. I was panicked. No rational thoughts ran through my brain except one: survive. As I was brought closer to its face, I grabbed the pocket knife from my right pocket and plunged it deep into the neck of the creature. It dropped me and let out a horrifying scream. My camera smashed on the floor, and I felt Bryce grab my arm to pull me up. We bolted for the door and slammed it behind us. We could still hear it screaming and screeching as we ran up the stairs. When we got up the stairs and above the hatch in the floor, I tied a chain around the lock, hoping it would give us more time. After that, we just sprinted back to our car. It was pitch black by that point, so when we got in the car, we sped off and didn't look back for a second. It was a very silent car ride back to the airport. We got on an earlier flight back home and left that night, and we didn't talk about what happened until we got back home. I didn't leave my room for the rest of that winter break. If it weren't for the journal and the pictures, I would have thought that I dreamt it, but no. The pictures showed the disgusting creature exactly how I remember it. And I'm glad that I switched out the SD cards, or I would have no pictures of it. I won't post any of them here, mainly because I don't want people finding this place and making the same mistake that I did. But I will post a section from the journal that I was able to translate. Most of the journal is illegible, but I could make out this small section. Our tests have not been getting better. It has become even more violent, no longer eating the rabbits, but just tearing them apart. Nobody here wants to get into the cage with it anymore, because of the fact that it seems to find joy in destroying the animals. Also the screaming. I will never forget the screaming until the day I die. March 24, 1942.
An experiment that was forgotten. Kinda sad in some ways, but it doesn't seem this animal would be fun petting. Maybe exploring abandoned buildings is a bad thing. Just a thought. Thank you, MCT, for your story. Now, on to the last one. This is Dark Little Voices. Here we have two voices, Shade and Decay. Shade mostly does the storytelling, but Decay throws her voice in every once in a while. Don't worry, you've heard Shade already. He lent his voice to PA Nightmare's story. So, you already had a dark little voice in your head. Let's get you another one. The Mansion on the Hill. Written and narrated by both Shade and Decay from Dark Little Voices.
Ever since I started dating my girlfriend, Tori, things have gotten weird. Don't get me wrong, she's simply amazing. We always have a great time no matter what, and just talking to her leaves my heart racing a mile a minute. But there's something about her that seems to trigger this reoccurring nightmare that I really don't understand. Someone suggested talking about it to see if the nightmare would end, or see a shrink to see if it's something that I'm just not understanding about myself. Either way, I can't stop thinking about it. Here's what seems to happen before the nightmare starts. We finally go on a date and try to improve on our relationship because we've grown pretty close. We go to bed and I think to myself how life is perfect the way it is. And then I slowly drift away to sleep. The nightmare starts with the fact that I'm lost in the woods somehow, traveling for a while in the dark. I see a well-lit gate up the hill. I've never seen this place before, but the mansion that seems to be a good distance from the gate seems beautiful and inviting. That's when my girlfriend invites me in. I try to ask her who lives here, or for that matter, does this belong to her? With a creepy giggle, she simply says,
No, my love. This is our home. You know that. Now come on. I've missed you.
She pulls me along, and I feel warning bells in my head telling me that this is a horrible idea. It warns me that if I go inside, things are going to get worse. I force myself to memorize details such as the car that I somehow have the keys to, the sky being pitch black as if something swallowed the stars themselves and left everything in a pitch black state. I turn around to look and see if I can see the forest that I just came out of, but it is swallowed up by darkness. The only thing I can see is everything on the property. Anything outside of it seems to no longer exist. I told Tori, "Baby, maybe we should leave." In a demonic voice, she shouts, "No!" I begin to panic more as I demand for her to let go of me. Damn it, Tori! I said let go of me! She ignores me as I tell her she's hurting me. She never looks back as we inch closer and closer to this beautiful wooden double-sided door. Their bright wooden color fades to black as I enter. The second I get free from her grasp, I run as fast as I can, with her laugh echoing. I begin to think that I've escaped as her footsteps die down. I feel a sense of vertigo, but I know if I collapse or gag from the nauseating feeling, she's going to find me. It becomes a game of who can outsmart who. Like a scared rat, I hide along the rafters somehow. I can't help but feel as if she's only toying with me. This is where the nightmare ends, but it doesn't stop here. I only wish it did. Despite the nightmares, Tori and I continue to see each other, and I asked for her hand in marriage. That's when it got worse. Way worse. The nightmare played out as it usually did, but things were different. This time, men that I've never seen before chased me all throughout the woods. They tried to stab and shoot me. Little did I know why. I managed to hold refuge in what I thought was an abandoned home. They stopped looking for me the second that I got in the house. As I started to stand up and get a hold of myself, I looked around and fear turned my blood cold as I realized they baited me back to the fucking mansion on the hill. Damn you! I couldn't help but yell out.
And it's you who are damned,
said the whispering voice. Unfortunately, I knew exactly what it was. It was a nightmare version of Tori. I'm getting out of here, I said sternly. That's when she showed herself as this large, centipede-like creature.
Try that all you like. You won't escape again, but you will be mine.
She immediately tried to attack me and almost took my right arm in the process. The chase began almost immediately. I ran up the stairs until she caught up to me quickly on her human hands for feet and arms for legs. I jumped off the banister as she screeched in anger. As soon as I touched the ground, she destroyed the banister, and I ran into a random room. Barely escaping, I tried to wake up. Wake up, wake up! Then my alarm clock woke me up. I woke up in a cold sweat, and had never been so happy to wake up to an alarm before. However, as I went to turn off the alarm, her voice appeared in my head.
This isn't over!
It said angrily.
I will find you, my love.
It whispered in my mind. For the rest of the week, I was on edge. I now knew that whatever this creature was had the ability to pretend to be my fiancé. Despite this, years had gone by without a single incident. So, I naturally assumed that I was in the clear. Then one day, sometime after we had our second child, it happened again. Same nightmare, only this time, I got brave and challenged the creature. This time the wager was higher than I wanted it to. If this time I failed to escape before the dream ended, my children would be doomed to this exact hell that I was in. Clocks ticked on rapidly to mock the fact that I was running out of time and needed to make the choice. I finally agreed and everything went so quiet, you could hear your own heartbeat. I quickly ran up the stairs knowing that the front door wasn't an option. I hadn't considered that I would need to save my kids in the madness. In fact, the only reason I knew they were involved was because they both screamed and cried for me. I felt myself breaking into pieces at this, but I knew I had to press on. I screamed for them over and over until I saw a large detailed door that made me feel uneasy. That's when the fake Tori ran at me. I tried to bash my way into the door, but it was hard to do as it was a heavy wooden door. The kids screamed for me again as Tori came closer, and finally I made my choice. I quickly outsmarted her, cutting my hand in the process. I used a knife on the door as the creature pretending to be my wife screamed in torture. I stabbed the door several times before it disappeared, and the door was open. I quickly rushed and picked them up. I ran throughout the house as the creature's centipede form came after us. My poor, innocent children screamed and cried into me as the creature's razor-sharp claws grazed my back, sending me tumbling down the stairs. I used my now bloodied body as a human shield.
You can't escape, my love. You will be mine.
She shouted with excitement as she crawled quickly down the now broken stairs. The fuck I will, I shouted back. Suddenly, my heart raced more as I could feel time counting itself down. Tears fell from my face. This was it, I thought to myself. My children and I were doomed to be this thing's plaything. I shut my eyes tightly as I told my crying children that their papa loved them more than anything in the world. The creature's massive, toothy maw was about to clamp down on us when I saw that part of the house that Tori and I dreamt about having. Our own greenhouse. I didn't hesitate or even try to make sense. I ran as fast as I could with my kids gripping me so tight that I thought pieces of my flesh would be bruised or scarred. It didn't matter. With the last of my strength, we broke through the glass part of the greenhouse. The creature screamed in defeat as I tried to prevent shards of glass from impaling my kids. It wasn't over. The creature didn't care that it lost and that we won. She just wanted to eat and torment us. What made the endeavor worse was the clock was still ticking. It didn't make sense until I quickly realized the mansion grounds counted too. I quickly remembered the vehicles and I tried to run to it. As I did, I looked down and saw my left leg was covered in glass shards. Damn it! I screamed as I kept moving. Every single step felt as if the glass seeped deeper in my skin and into my calf. It was a torture. She turned back into my wife and walked slowly to us.
Baby, it's dark outside. Just come back with me. We can start over,
she said seductively. I threw my children into the car as I ignored her. Suddenly her face contorted into a huge smile with jagged teeth. I know I should have tried to save my wife, but my son and daughter needed me more. Besides, whatever took my wife wasn't planning on giving me a chance to save them all. I hotwired the car and immediately drove it backwards, slamming the gate open. We had barely made it out, but the creature looked amused, as if our fear was more than enough as it watched us drive away. I woke up crying, covered in sweat, and I ran to check on my kids. They were both sound asleep as I sighed with relief. My wife went to check if I was okay. I felt stupid as I talked to her about the nightmares. She assured me that they were just nightmares and that everything was okay. She went downstairs to make breakfast. I went downstairs to see her after I brushed my teeth. I was honestly relieved that despite how much the pain felt so real, it was all just a series of bad dreams. As I entered the kitchen, I realized that I barely heard her after I brushed my teeth, or any of the kitchen utensils being used. I looked at our family table and saw her favorite cross stabbed into the table upside down. My wife isn't known for her pranks and is a religious woman, so I knew she would never do this. That's when, to my left, I felt a dark presence. It was similar to the creature in the nightmare. My blood turned cold as ice as she said,
"Welcome home, sweetheart. I told you that you and I would be together. We will be together forever. And the best part is that now not even death can tear us apart."
I ran upstairs to get my kids when I realized I never had kids. We were planning on kids, but not right now. That's when the last words I heard were whispered into my ear.
You really shouldn't have moved here. You are all mine now.
And everything since then went dark.
It seems her love had no bounds. A dream lover became reality in the worst kind of ways. Really kind of creepy to think she made up children just to get to him. Thank you, dark little voices, for your story. And with that story out of the way, our night's evening full of different stories from different tellers is coming to an end. I would like to thank Willow the Schizo, Idiotic Synergy, Hair-Raising Narratives, Serafin the Midnight Bard, Danie Dreadful, The Scary Show, PA Nightmares, Gamma Akutabi, Dr. Vexy, or Vex, Miss Creepy Tales, and last but never least, Dark Little Voices. Thank you, every single one of you, for lending your voice for this dark, dreadful, horrific, spine-chilling evening full of stories. And of course, thank you every single writer who let these narrators read your stories. You guys are always awesome. Now, if a narrator tickled your ears, sent a chill down your spine, or made you curious what other stories they might hold for you, well, I have all their links down below. So go ahead, check them out. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. It is crazy to think that as of now, I have been on YouTube for 2 years, and I'm now at 750 subscribers. But as of recording this, I'm at 769 subscribers, and it didn't take that long to put this together once I reached that 750. So, thank you. Every subscriber, every listener, every narrator, every writer, every single one of you who have been here, who have supported me, who just everything. Like, really, guys, thank you so much. It really means a lot that there's this many subscribers and I've had this much support in the community, and you guys are just awesome. All I'm going to ask in this video is, if you are new, subscribe. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. And leave me a comment. Tell me what story was your favorite. And if you're one of the narrators, tell me what you think of how I put this together. Thank you guys again. And remember, sleep tight and don't let 42 bite.